Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. Joining me, once again, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on? So today we're going to be talking all about Ahsoka, Season 1. Presumably Season 1. I imagine there's going to be a Season 2, especially with how this one kind of leaves things off. So if you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So before we hop in, Cam, general overview thoughts of the season.
Sure. I will say I really was not... I did not know what to expect coming into the season. As somebody who really enjoyed Rebels, and really enjoyed, I've been a pretty vocal and big proponent for the majority of the Filoniification of the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. I think, you and I have had great discussions about how I love, and like I've expressed this to you before, I love the kind of like retconning that Filoni's done with a lot of the absolute goober awful decisions that have been made by other people. He has a great way of making it fit and work in that universe, in that galaxy, in that galaxy far, far away. So he does such an amazing job of setting up so much of this is clearly the path of how we get to episode 7. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, this is how we're going to try to explain
Episode 9.
Yeah. Which is the great misfortune of Star Wars, is that it ended with episode 9. If you want to know how we felt about that in more detail, there's an entire podcast about it where we talk about it with Frank and Logan.
Yeah. There's a couple podcasts, because that was one of our early spoiler casts on that nerdy site show.
Yeah, wow, that was a brutal spoiler cast. We had Josh Silverman on that. Great.
Who was in the theater with us, unbeknownst to us when we saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty flying high on it. I thought that I didn't know what to expect from an Ahsoka show, and I thought the way that they approached it and the way that they've delivered on it, I think, has been pretty spectacular. I've been very impressed with just about every episode. I think it takes a little bit to get going, but once it's going, it's really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a good time with it. It's very much, I kind of went in expecting it to be a Rebel Season 5 kind of thing, and it was, for me, largely a Rebel Season 5. For good and bad. I think there were some elements that I would have missed from a Rebel Season 5, obviously, which we wouldn't get because they were, killed off. So not having Kanan around and having the whole Rebels crew together, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the fact that we don't really get Zeb in this show, we got a nod to him in, another thing, obviously full spoilers and stuff.
He has a cameo in Mandalorian Season 3.
Yeah, in The Mandalorian, but nowhere to be seen in here. He gets a mention, a name drop here or there, and so Zeb's training recruits or something. That's all we get of him in this. So I kind of I missed elements of the gang together, but the gang that we do get here, all really good, really strong, having a good time there. I'll be curious to see. I know you kind of talk about a lot how this is going to tie into episode 9 stuff. Tim over at Kind of Funny does as well. I'll be curious to see how much we do to actually bridge the gap there and set those things up. There are elements here that, okay, with what they've given us, you can make the jumps now. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if that's largely as far as it goes. And really, a lot of this is about setting up this, Thrawn as a Thanos type character for these Disney Plus shows and stuff. But yeah, I mean, lots of good stuff here. I did find myself, especially in the last couple of episodes, feeling like rushing to the finish, which is always a frustrating feeling when they can create as many episodes as they want and they choose to squeeze it all into 8. The last episode in particular was we're just going from scene to scene to scene to scene, and I'm like, okay, you probably could have like paced some of this stuff out better, or you're just really showing us that some of these things don't matter as much as other things. So it's kind of like my freshest takes, having watched the finale last night or a couple nights ago, I guess. But yeah, overall, had a good time. I'm very interested to see where they go from here, be it in this show or in whatever kind of Filoni-verse show kind of takes over next, as we've seen. So yeah, be curious to see how that all plays out. We'll dive into more of our specific thoughts of the season as a whole later on. But why did we pick this? Because it is the new Star Wars thing. Obviously, we were either on hiatus or we were kind of catching up on some of our Spider-Man stuff when all this stuff started coming out. So didn't have our usual like episode 1 kind of kickoff thing. So now that the whole season has wrapped up, we figured dive into that before we dive into Halloween themed stuff the rest of the month. Our history lesson here, originally released between August 22nd and October 3rd, 2023. The episodes have a runtime ranging from 37 minutes to the premiere, which was 57 minutes long. In our Star Wars TV timeline of things, we had the Book of Boba Fett back at the end of 2021/early 2022. And we had Obi-Wan Kenobi in May through June of 22. Andor is September through November of 2022. Earlier this year, March and April, we had Mandalorian. We've now here had Ahsoka, August through October 2023. Up next on the slate, live action wise, we've got Skeleton Crew, slated for sometime still TBD 2023. Don't know if we're actually going to hit that, especially with the actor strike continuing. It was already weird enough, the fact that like actors weren't out promoting this at all because of the actor strike. So I wouldn't be surprised if Skeleton Crew gets pushed back to 2024. We also have The Acolyte scheduled for 2024. Which is, I believe, a High Republic set series. So we'll see how that ties into anything, if anything.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Our first live action High Republic stuff.
At least according to the Wikipedia like blurb that I was seeing when I was putting this all together. And then Andor, slated maybe for August 2024. That's another one that was certainly impacted by the strikes, so who knows if we'll actually see that, but that's where it's currently at from latest reports. Our roll call here, we had Dave Filoni, of course, in here as one of our directors. He directed episode 1, or part 1, Master and Apprentice, as well as part 5, The Shadow Warrior. Of course, Dave Filoni, known from directing projects like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where he got his start, but then, of course, taking over with The Clone Wars, Rebels, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Tales of the Jedi, basically anything in the Disney era of Star Wars, and even before that a little bit. He's basically become the new shepherd of Star Wars. Steph Green directed episodes 2 and 3, Toil and Trouble and Time to Fly. She has some directing credits from shows like American Gothic, Billions, Bates Motel, Scandal, The Americans, Luke Cage, the HBO Watchmen series, and she did an episode of The Book of Boba Fett. Peter Ramsey directed Part 4, Fallen Jedi. In addition to being one of the directors of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, he also has directed Rise of the Guardians prior to that, and then he's also been a director for The Mandalorian. Jennifer Getzinger directed Part 6, Far, Far Away. So yeah, after Peter Ramsey, we had Dave Filoni come back for Part 5. Part 6, Far, Far Away, Jennifer Getzinger. She's directed episodes of TV stuff like Desperate Housewives, Suits, Masters of Sex, Revenge, Orange is the New Black, Mad Men, Agent Carter, Daredevil, Outlander, which I'll give as a shout out because my sister very much loves that show, How to Get Away with Murder, Jessica Jones, and Westworld. Geeta Vasant Patel directed Part 7, Dreams and Madness. She's directed Meet the Patels, as well as shows Fresh Off the Boat, The Mindy Project, Superstore, Dead to Me, Runaways, and House of the Dragon. And Rick Famuyiwa directed Part 8, the finale here, The Jedi, The Witch, and the Warlord. He's directed projects like Dope and The Chai. But he's probably known to our audience for his work over multiple seasons of The Mandalorian now. as one of their executive producers. And our writer here, Dave Filoni, done wrote the whole thing. He's got the created by and written by credit on every episode. Of course, having worked on stuff like Clone Wars, Rebels, Book of Boba Fett, Bad Batch, and Mandalorian, and now Ahsoka, very much the steward of the Ahsoka character.
Not only that, but also is an OG Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, I mentioned that in his directing stuff.
Oh, you did? Sorry about that. My bad.
I get it. I talk a lot during this chunk of the show. Very easy to get distracted.
There's a lot of info that flies at. Here's the thing. I absorb probably about 90% of it every time you do it. There's always stuff I miss. Because inevitably I mention something. You're like, oh, I mentioned it up at the top of the run. It's like, right, okay.
Yep.
There's a lot.
All good. But yes, Dave Filoni, of course, longtime proponent of the Ahsoka character. So this is very much probably a dream come true, bringing this to life. Our cast of characters: Rosario Dawson returning as Ahsoka Tano. Some of her earliest credits going back to stuff like Josie and the Pussycats and Men in Black 2. She worked previously with our Anakin Skywalker here in the film Shattered Glass back in 2005.
Yeah, she did. Oh my gosh, that's such a good pull.
Nice little reunion for the two of them. She was also in the films Sin City, Rent. She was in the MCU Netflix verse with Daredevil and Iron Fist and other things like that. On the gaming side, she was in Dishonored 2 and last year's Dying Light 2. If you want more Dying Light content, you can go watch a whole series of Let's Plays that Cameron did on the game.
Yep.
She's also she played Batgirl in the Lego Batman movie. And of course, she's been playing Ahsoka Tano in appearances in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. And she was also in this summer's Haunted Mansion, which we will probably be visiting in a couple weeks as part of our Halloween 2023 That D Plus Show month. David Tennant also returning to the role of Hu Yang here. Of course, probably best known to audiences as Doctor Who, and now returning to Doctor Who shortly here, which will also be a Disney Plus offering, which will be a weird thing that we can do, and probably will do, because I know a lot of us are Whovians.
Doctor Who's freaking great.
He also did Broadchurch, the first season of Jessica Jones. He played Hu Yang in a couple episodes of The Clone Wars. He was Scrooge McDuck in the DuckTales reboot, and he's been in the Neil Gaiman series Good Omens the last few years. That's the Neil Gaiman series, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's right. Natasha Liu Bordizzo playing Sabine Wren here. One of her earliest projects was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny. She was also in The Greatest Showman, as well as Detective Chinatown 2, big film in the Chinese market, I believe. Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Hera Syndulla here. We were just talking about this recently, that she was in Live Free or Die Hard. She's also, of course, in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, 10 Cloverfield Lane. She was in one of the seasons of Fargo. She was in Birds of Prey, and she'll be in the upcoming Scott Pilgrim Takes Off anime series, based on the animated graphic novels as well as the movies, or the movie. Ray Stevenson, the late great Ray Stevenson here as Balin Skoll, got his probably big break in the Stars, I want to say, series, or maybe Showtime. Rome. He's also he was Frank Castle in the Punisher Warzone film. He was in The Book of Eli. He played one of Thor's buddies in the Thor series before getting I believe Volstagg was who he was, before getting unceremoniously killed in Thor Ragnarok. He was in the 2011 version of Three Musketeers. He was in Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars as a different character, Gar Saxon, in a number of episodes of those series. He was in Vikings, and he was in last year's breakout Indian film RRR as the big bad. Ivana Sakno as Shinhati in here. She's in films like Pacific Rim Uprising, The Spy Who Dumped Me, and the series based on the film High Fidelity of the same name. Diana Lee Inosanto playing Morgan Elsbeth here, reprising that role from Mandalorian Season 2. She got a handful of acting credits, but she mostly has done stunt work, going all the way back to 1994, including projects like Touched by an Angel, Barbed Wire, Face Off, Blade, Wild Wild West, Mystery Men, and most recently, Alita Battle Angel. Iman Esfandi playing Ezra Bridger. A handful of credits, with King Richard being his most notable prior to his turn here as Ezra Bridger. Of course, we get the return of Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. I remember seeing him early in his career in the film Life is a House around the time of the prequels. Of course, then he broke out as Anakin in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Shattered Glass, as we mentioned. He was in Jumper. And then more recently, started returning to the role of Anakin in a voice role in Rise of Skywalker, as well as more prominently in the recent Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Lars Mikkelsen, reprising his role as Grand Admiral Thrawn from Star Wars Rebels. He's also been in House of Cards and the Netflix Witcher series. Genevieve O'Reilly, returning as Chancellor Mon Mothma, which she's been playing on and off since Revenge of the Sith, including in Rogue One and Andor. She's also in the Overwatch series. Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, returning as Captain Carson Teva, prior to Star Wars, probably best known for Kim's Convenience. He's also been popping up in The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, in addition to this. And then we got a fun little series of cameo kind of things here. Notably, Ariana Greenblatt playing young Ahsoka Tano there in episode 5, where we get the flashbacks and stuff. Kind of continuing her role as playing young so-and-so. She was young Gamora in Avengers Infinity War. She was young Nina in The Heights. She was in this year's Barbie, and she will be Tiny Tina in the Borderlands movie whenever that comes out. And then we have just some kind of little cameo things. Clancy Brown as Governor Ryder Azadi, Tamura Morrison as Captain Rex, Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, and Dave Filoni as Chopper, all kind of reprising in some form or fashion roles that they've played elsewhere across the Star Wars verse. A little bit of trivia before we dive into our thoughts here. As noted above, Rosario Dawson's third time playing Ahsoka Tano, having first appeared in Season 2 of The Mandalorian and then in The Book of Boba Fett. Similarly, this is David Tennant's reprising his role of Huyang after a 2-episode arc in Star Wars The Clone Wars. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, here playing Hera, is married to Ewan McGregor, of course, our young Obi-Wan Kenobi. So a lovely just Star Wars royalty there. And then this was just a fun one that I saw. The handheld device that Sabine Wren plugs the droid's head into back in one of those first episodes is an old retro games console called Galaxy Invader CGL Vintage 1978. She just holds it upside down. So thank you to whoever eagle-eye fan of that found that out and put that on IMDb. I'm sure there's a ton of other Easter eggy things out there that you could dive into, but I didn't find a good centralized location for all of the season as a whole, and I didn't want to just go through like episode by episode, be like, here's this Easter egg, and here's this one, and here's this one. There are lots of Easter eggs. It's a Star Wars thing. Shocking. So Cam, with all that in mind, let's dive into deeper thoughts about what we thought. I guess starting with, let's say, Ahsoka herself. What do you think of Rosario Dawson in this run?
You know, I've always felt a bit mixed seeing a animated character.
Not Ashley Eckstein playing the role.
Yeah, that as well as just overall, just the idea of a animated character come to life and then seeing it across the board in this show is quite striking. Like, you have to get the right casting done. Rosario Dawson is such an A-list actor for me. Not because she's a massive blow-up star, but because she is really, you listed off some of the films she's been in. You've listed off some of the projects she's been attached to.
I didn't call out the Clerks films, but obviously
yeah, the Clerks films as well. She is a truly incredible actress who can delve so deeply into a character, and just, even though it's Rosario Dawson, I never feel like I'm watching her kind of be the same role that she's been before. She melts into Ahsoka Tano as a character, and of course being this adult kind of like pseudo broken, pseudo put together person that Ahsoka is as a character at this point in her life. And Rosario Dawson just wears that perfectly. There is such a uniqueness to the character. And I like Ahsoka is one of those characters that like when she was introduced, I hated her. I thought she sucked. But over time, that character endears herself to you, and then you root for her, and then you see her kind of like her fall from the Jedi Order and everything, and seeing her kind of come to life through Rosario Dawson. Like, I honestly don't think you could have found a better actress for that role. I just don't think you could have. She is so fantastic at this, and I really appreciated the care that she's brought to this character and bringing her to life. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm a massive fan of it. I wasn't initially in The Mandalorian season 2, even in season 3, but this show is what sold me. Like the first section where she is at the temple, that sold me. I'm like, okay, this is what Dave Filoni has seen from her this entire time. She does it so well. Her chemistry with Huyang and Sabine, like it's fantastic. It's not electric in the way that it's exciting, but it's so subdued in her approach to it and just kind of sliding into a pair of already well-worn slippers. Mm-hmm. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've on and off over the years, like started kind of rewatching through Rebels and stuff. I've never done like a rewatch of Clone Wars, but like
it's a lot to rewatch.
It's a lot to rewatch. And it's very interesting because I feel like my thoughts on Ahsoka are so largely driven by like her interpretation in the Clone Wars as, you know, a young Padawan always trying to impress and kind of thing. And she goes on a significant arc over the course of the Clone Wars. But like, yeah, I think similar to you, I don't think I ever hated her, especially I came to Clone Wars and Rebels very late compared to like when they were originally airing. But yeah, she like strikes me as like young and naive, and that's like the image I have of her just because that's like the first impression, despite knowing that she goes through a lot over the course of Clone Wars. And then obviously we meet her at a very different point come the time of Rebels, where she's been in hiding and she's, you know, acting as Fulcrum and stuff like that. But like, that's so much more of a blur for me, I guess. And for me, Rebels, like the crew of the Ghost is who takes mm-hmm. like front and center in Rebels, and Ahsoka is very much like a background character there, which obviously is the intent of that show. And so when Rosario Dawson starts playing her in live action, I'm in my mind having to like kind of have this juxtaposition of like, okay, the version of Ahsoka from Clone Wars, much more cartoony, much more kid focused anyway, and you know, little goofy kind of character, a little more fun as a foil to Anakin Skywalker in particular, and then come to like her role in Rebels, it's okay, now she has to be the adult in the room, and you get Ezra being the foil to her and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so the version we've gotten in live action so far has lost, I think, some of the levity that we got of the character over the animated version.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We get like the slightest glimpses of that in this in the Ahsoka series here. In particular, like she lightens up seemingly a lot, I think, after the whole stuff with her and Anakin, where she, you know, is kind of cracking very wry jokes with Huyang. But I still miss the fun of that character.
Sure.
And that's not anything on Rosario Dawson's part. I think she could absolutely like bring that fun to the character. But yeah, I think very much it's just like it feels so dour for a lot of it, and it's that thing that I think we see a lot in in media, and somebody pointed this out in a video I watched recently of like, okay, you just if you're going to revisit a character so many years later, apparently the only way you can do that is to have, put them down on their luck. They've, fallen on hard times, and now that's the new journey that they have to come. We've seen that with both Han Solo and Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars stuff. We saw it most recently with Indiana Jones, same another Harrison Ford character. But like that's the vibe we seem to get stuck with, is like, okay, sad, grumpy, and then maybe you'll get a smile out of them by the end of it or something like that. And I feel like there's a little bit of that vibe here in Ahsoka.
I can see that. I think that might just be like, how do you tell the story of somebody in their 30s or 40s?
Yeah.
Or later in life. Like, I think a big part of that is like, you want to tell a rising arc of somebody's story when you're doing storytelling, because that's how you make it interesting and engaging.
Yeah.
But I think you are right. I think it has become quite one note, for our plucky hero has become down on their luck. Granted, Ahsoka's a veteran of 2 wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, not like she's had a rough life, like, for sure.
Yeah. And that's, I will say, like, one of the most striking things is like in episode 5 and going back and seeing like Ariana Greenblatt and
oh
like,
yeah, baby
young,
Ahsoka,
young baby Ahsoka as a general of war kind of thing, and being like, oh yeah, that's right. The Jedi are 100% throwing child soldiers out there. All of those younglings Anakin kills off, only a couple years away from fighting and leading the front lines kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wild to see that like visual juxtaposition
there. And him having to give her like a pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was only like, he was like 18 or 19 when when the Clone Wars kicked off.
Oh, yeah, probably.
So he was barely an adult when he all of a sudden was made a general.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, he's probably the best person to talk to her and help her through, like, the struggles. The scene we get between Hayden Christensen and, I want to make sure
Ariana Greenblatt.
Yeah, Ariana Greenblatt. She's fantastic, by the way, as young Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
Her cross-armed smugness just like pulled from the animated series, so perfect.
Yeah.
Their scenes together were really, really good in episode 5. Mm-hmm. And getting to see Hayden Christensen be Clone Wars show Anakin was fun. It's so good to see. It's like Hayden Christensen was not the problem. Like, we've known that for a while, but like, he is such a, like, he has so much, and also like, how much easier is it for him now, because he's also like a father, and in his own personal life, like, there's a lot for him to draw on, and it's clearly delivered on in those scenes. But I think the part of the problem with like story, like, are we seeing that story a lot? I'm like, yeah, but that story is like really troped up and like really normal in storytelling when you're trying to tell the story about either somebody who you as the audience have seen before.
I mean, yeah, and the problem is these days we're seeing it so much because so many things are getting rebooted that we see things 15, 20 years later instead of, like it in the 3 Captain America movies or something. There's always going to be a little bit of a reset point that you're kind of going off of, but it doesn't feel as noticeable when it's, they're pretty much the same character we left off with last time. But yeah, here, like, when there's such a wide gap there, it's leaving us to fill in the blank, and all you're really giving us is, well, sometime in that 20 years they hit rock bottom and had to restart all over again. That's a disappointing thing, especially for, our golden hero that we saw like go off into the sunset kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah, I think the inversion of the heroic like sunset being like, well, eventually, no matter how heroic you are, you'll still end up at rock bottom, is kind of like a bit too much of like the standard now. I think you're right. But I also think like before that we had, my life is great, except my life is nothing without the conflict and like strife that comes with having a harder life that I dealt with in the past. Like, you see that in previous storytelling device or just stories. But I think when you're talking about like,
I think for me, it just even in this example, like, it's probably not even as noticeable going from Clone Wars to Rebels because Ahsoka is a supporting character in that. So
That's fair.
Like we are able to focus more on the new upstarts that like she's helping kind of shepherd along, whereas this it is putting her back into like the spotlight kind of role, and so we are left being like, okay, yeah, she's just like sad, clear, like we find out over the course of the series like what's happened between her and Sabine and why they kind of like came apart and all that stuff. But even like the little bits we've had of her going from like her first appearance in The Mandalorian to like her and Luke chatting it up in Book of Boba Fett to here, it's like, oh, like what is Ahsoka's place in the post Return of the Jedi, order or era of things. And I still don't think we've gotten a great sense of that. Like this is the sense we've gotten of it, of like, oh, her place is going off to a galaxy far, far away, apparently.
Yeah.
And, and tying her back into, at some point, Thrawn stuff.
Yeah. I think that there is a, like, where do you place animated show characters in the live action timeline? Mm-hmm. That is a trick. And I think that they've, for the most part, it's like, it's fine. But I think that's part of the problem too. It's not like they've perfectly nailed it either. I think that where is Ahsoka's place? And it's like Ahsoka's place has been kind of like Ahsoka as a creation, as an idea, as a concept, Anakin's Padawan, is not something that was ever addressed in the original trilogy, or sorry, the prequel trilogy. We knew that based off of everything that we've been told and kind of the set up in episode 3, at some point, the assumption was Ahsoka would die at some point, preventing her from finishing her training. The truth is, and like what actually happened is a lot more tragic, and also does a lot more of like fermenting Anakin's distrust of the Council, which is once again the Filoni like trick of being like, it was like this the whole time, of his retcon magic trick that he likes to pull. Let me give you reasons for why we got the result that we got.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and spend 7 seasons to fill in a gap of 2 movies.
Yeah. So that's really his specialty, but I think on a larger scale, well, where is Ahsoka's place? I don't think we'll find out until the end of season 2 or maybe 3 of Ahsoka.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm saying like this is finally giving us a sense of what Ahsoka's place is, whereas like her previous little pop-ups were like
big question marks,
setups for this effectively. Like it's reintroducing her into or introducing her into like live action stuff for the people that don't watch the animated stuff and don't consider that canon.
They're stupid.
Agreed. I mean, there's definitely some stupid Clone Wars stuff that is like
absolutely
canon, and it's like, oh, it doesn't
absolutely.
need to be. But yeah, I think
there's so much in Clone Wars.
For me, there very much was this sense of like Ahsoka is like, I guess she was the eponymous star of the show, but I was far more interested in what was happening around her in this series. I thought Sabine Wren, very fascinating. Baylan Skoll obviously steals the show for me in a lot of the stuff.
Every scene he's in, he's dominating. Ray Stevenson is like, it's a true, like, speaking from just the artistic side, not just the human element of it, it's a devastating blow. Mm-hmm. Losing him is just like, whoever they recast, I'm sure will be great if they choose to recast it. But God damn, Ray Stevenson, like what an absolute like unsung legend of the screen that we got to have. And this is his final role. And it's so damn good.
Yeah. I think he's probably got some other stuff in the can that may come out. So it might not be his final role, but yeah, it's like he had like, I remember like early on in the season, I was like, oh, he's doing like a really cool, especially in how the Tales from the Jedi stuff like kind of added a lot of flavor to Count Dooku. He's kind of like, oh, he's not like full-blown evil and he's not interested in being full-blown evil. And he does have, a reverence and a mourning of what happened to the Jedi, but he also has become a student of history and has seen the rise and fall of not only this Jedi Order but past Jedi Orders and stuff like that. And so he's like he sees that this is all in cycles, and that's a wonderful perspective that we just haven't seen outside of probably expanded and Legends lore.
The
and stuff
only
like that.
person to really nail that, and like, there's only a few characters who take that kind of like lens to it. And one of them is Thrawn. Thrawn in the original Legends expanded universe, and even now here, has a like Thrawn. One of my favorite things about Thrawn is, at one point somebody says like, "Well, they're ready to sacrifice and give up their lives for you," and he stops them and says, "Not for me, for the Empire," because he's learned that when you surround yourself as a quote unquote emperor, like your death, your fall could be like, could end it all. Like the fault, and also the faults of the Empire were driven by a singular person allowing like the inefficiencies of a singular ruler, right? And like Thrawn is one of the worst kinds of evil. He's bureaucratic evil. He's the like evil for the sake of efficiency and execution, not out of any like moral sense, but out of just the judicious attitude that he has towards it. And it's like, that's one of the worst evils because there's zero compassion. Mm-hmm. He is the perfect heir to Palpatine's very like self-aggrandized stance as the Emperor, and his Sith sorcery, his whole persona that he was, which was like very self-aggrandizing. Thrawn is completely the opposite of, and which makes him a perfect heir to Palpatine. I love it, but I think the thing with that is like Thrawn and Baylan, and like maybe only like one or two others, I would say, in the expanded universe pre the Legends designation would fall into that. Luke in the expanded universe does that, like in the Legends does that. Obviously not the case, like he becomes that in Last Jedi. Like we see that in The Last Jedi when he's telling Rey about, she's like, well, the Jedi, he goes like, and he basically lists all the Jedi's faults. Mm-hmm. And he basically demystifies the idea and concept of the Jedi Order.
Yeah. Which again, like, you know, we also saw that
with Baylan, yeah,
with Baylan and with Count Dooku in the Tales from the Jedi stuff of like, here's where the Jedi are going wrong, and we saw it a lot in Clone Wars, and various characters in Clone Wars, kind of like, I mean, most notably Ahsoka be like walking away from the Order because, like, we're supposed to be protectors of the peace. Why are we fighting this war, kind of thing, and that like that sentiment that that we got from the perspective looking back kind of after the fact, really, as most of Clone Wars is. And obviously all of the allegories and stuff like that for, you know, the Iraq War and all are also, you know, scattered throughout all this stuff.
Yeah. What Star Wars being a comment, like having some commentary about like Vietnam from George Lucas, Dave Filoni bringing in that same kind of energy and perspective for the Iraq and Afghanistan war, the wars in the Middle East that we've been involved in, like 100% nails those allegories. Like he's like, it's really good. Star Wars is a great lens to, I'm going to compare it. There's another franchise that's really good about like creating a lens to view war and kind of like, and like its real life, kind of like like the real life reflections of it.
Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gundam.
It is Gundam. You nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Yes.
I've never seen Gundam, but I've heard you talk about Gundam enough to know that's where you were going.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like that's why it's one of the best franchises of all time. It's one of the reasons why it's hard to make a video game about it. But so it's back to Star Wars though. Like, yeah, Baylan, I love Baylan. When I think it's his apprentice who mentions Shin, she says, "Do you miss it?" And he like takes a moment, takes like that deep breath, breathes out and says like, not what it was, like not what it actually was, but like what it meant to me. Like that concept and idea, like the spirit of it, like the way he explains it to her is so poetic. And Ray Stevenson just fucking nails that line.
Mm-hmm. Same like when he talks about, or when he's talking with Morgan about like having to, try and kill Ahsoka. It's like, it's a shame, there's so few Jedi left or whatever. And, like the exchange they have is just some real good stuff. And like the, like, oh, or like, you're being sentimental. No, just like practical. Like it is, I can mourn what was, even if I, am in some ways glad it's gone, kind of thing. Yeah, he has so many just excellent layers to his performance, and the subtlety to it, I would say. Just real good stuff.
Speaking of his apprentice, Shin is fantastic. She's played by
Ivana Sock.
Ivana. Sorry, I'm trying to find it on our thing here, and I'm not finding. Is she towards the bottom more?
Or she's right below Ray Stevenson.
Ray Stevenson. Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah. Ivana Asakno. She is so good as subtle. Like, there's subtlety to her character, even though she's supposed to be like the impetuous apprentice.
There are so many moments that she has like that, like looking to like dad for approval kind of thing, of like, and or like, I'm going to follow your lead. What are you going to do? What do you want me to do, kind of thing? But she's doing it all with just her eyes, kind of thing.
Yep. And she delivers that so perfectly. And the way Ray Stevenson is just like, he's getting ready to send her off on her own. And like, I was thinking about it, and I'm thinking about all these moments that he's like giving her lessons. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he's our master. He's giving her lessons. It's like, no, he's giving her her final lessons. She is fully capable of defending herself. She is strong in the Force. And she has an odd, balanced imbalance between her aggressive nature and her like strategic think about her and her approach to stuff. She's really, really good as an actress, and just the performance. I love Shin as a character. I'm very excited to see what happens with her character, because she's clearly made a decision about what she's going to go do. And it's really interesting. Like the layers of how they lay this ending out. And so not going to get to see Ray Stevenson finish the journey that he started with Baylan Skoll is sad. But man, what a phenomenal performance to leave us with. And just an absolute absolute brilliant character. I love Baylan Skoll. He is, whether it's his they keep referring to him as a mercenary, and it's clear that he sees himself as that, but he also sees himself as something more. And then when Shin says, will you train me? And he goes, not to be a Jedi. I never trained you to be a Jedi. I trained you to be something more. And it's like, there's so many great moments like that of like, he sees the bigger picture. He knows there's something more out there, and he just nails it every scene that he's in. He's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. I think one of the big tragedies we will see is the fact that like you said, I'm all for them recasting this role. I don't think like as great as he is in this role, I would sooner see the character continue on in some form or fashion rather than them be like, well, the actor died, we got to cut it short. And I think that's the way to go on this one. It's not like what they've done in the past of like, well, we're not going to recast so and so because of the lineage and legacy that they have. It's like, okay, fine. Even that, I would have sooner see them cast Leia Organa than what they did with Episode 9.
Absolutely. But then again, you and I have often been the proponent of we should recast these roles.
Yeah. Because
you and I both have a background in stage, and we know that like, even with newer productions of things like Hamilton or other like Wicked, like there's something that each new person who takes on that role delivers to the overarching legacy of the performances.
Yeah.
That has something to it.
I mean,
we just mentioned Doctor Who, right?
Yeah, Doctor Who, obviously. I'll bring up the example of Harry Potter. Fuck turfs. But obviously, Michael Gambon just passed away, who took over the role of Dumbledore after Richard Harris passed after just the second movie. So,
yeah,
like, imagine if they'd just been like, well, Richard Harris was Dumbledore, so we're just not going to use Dumbledore anymore. It's like, no, like, don't do that.
Do the work. Take the flack that comes from people who don't want you to recast it, and then recast it. Yeah. It's the way that it should be.
Yeah.
That's just, that's our personal opinion, but
yeah. But yes,
it's also the correct opinion.
Yeah. So I will say, kind of on, you mentioned Thrawn, like, especially now that we were through the whole season, getting to Thrawn seemed like it took very long.
It did seem like it took very long.
And then once we finally got to Thrawn in this, other galaxy far, far away, then it goes to, I think, my pacing thing earlier, of like, we spent so much time with like slow moving people around the board in the first 4 episodes, that once we finally make the jump to the new galaxy in episode 6, like, we have so little time. We have
3 episodes with them
to spend with Thrawn, and obviously, like, bigger picture, they're just using this to set up an Heir to the Empire movie or other story, or whatever the future of the Filoniverse is going to obviously pick up where we're leaving off here, and this is closing the loop on how Rebels ended, basically.
Yep.
But it's in hindsight, it's like, oh, I wish we'd gotten there a couple episodes sooner and maybe found places to squeeze out of those first couple episodes, and maybe done, maybe instead of going to Corellia to find out that there's, droids still loyal to the Empire, we didn't really need that. We probably saw that in Obi-Wan or whatever, it's not Obi-Wan, but we've seen it in like Mandalorian.
Yeah.
You didn't need it like reinforced again here. So I think that could have been, I think we probably could have avoided some of the side quests, and gotten to...
but then we wouldn't have gotten that really awesome shipyard fight.
I mean, we would have, or we could have. That just would have happened elsewhere with other characters, maybe. Like, it could have happened on... Like, there's nothing about that shipyard fight, for me at least, that's like, oh, that needed to happen. That needed to happen in a shipyard.
Yeah, I know.
Am I forgetting something?
No, there's nothing.
They're very specifically like, oh, they're like throwing ship parts at each other or something.
No, nothing like that. No, it's much more of like, I just really love the set piece. And I love the idea of like the thing you're watching is getting away from you like that, and it's right in front of you, but you can't get out to it because there's this random Merrick Inquisitor that's just like hanging out, doing stuff for some reason. I don't know. Thought he was Ezra. It wasn't Ezra, and that's fine. That's good. I actually like the way they did Ezra way better.
Yeah. It was fun. We had that, and again, you were nowhere near alone in that theory of like, it's Ezra, it's secretly Ezra. But I would like, even when I was hearing that before the reveal, I was like, that doesn't make sense. How could that be Ezra, who went the same place as Thrawn, and they've brainwashed him and aren't using him to get back to Thrawn or something like that. So it didn't make it. That said, the reveal that he's just like a smoke inquisitor also doesn't really make sense.
No, didn't make any goddamn sense.
It's just like, okay, well, so is he just like, an embodiment of evil? He didn't need to be a thing. He could have just been like many of the inquisitors were, an imposing, force without a face, or with that, spooky helmet or something like that. But yeah, then having that weird, like, oh, smoke is just flying out of him when he dies.
It didn't make any goddamn sense.
Okay.
It's fine. Here's the thing. He'll probably come back later, like reformed. And it'll be like, that's weird, but whatever.
That's true. The Night Sisters might bring him back as a zombie now.
Yeah, for all we know, that could be a Night Sister thing. Like, he could be like a fake Inquisitor the entire time.
Yeah.
Been some sort of construct by the Night Sisters.
Could have been some body they picked up off of Dathomir.
Yep. Right on. But yeah, no, I will say another thing I wanted to give a massive shout out to was, when we talk about people sliding into roles, I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead, it was a bit odd seeing her as Hera, because just I've known her as an actress my entire life. Mm-hmm. I think she does a really good job. I think Hera's a really great role. I think that there's definitely room for improvement, I think.
For me, the weirdest bit for me was just like the contact lenses, the very, very blue contact lenses. I was like, this is off-putting and weird.
That was weird. I will tell you what, though, I will take the eye contacts on another character 10 times out of 10. Ezra.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just need to say outright, Iman Esfandi is, holy crap, he's incredible. He's incredible. He has picked up the character of Ezra and is wearing it perfectly. He is Ezra to me. I cannot believe they found a guy who is this talented, who he can just be this character. And it's like he's leapt from the animated screen to live action seamlessly. No growing pains that we saw with Ahsoka. No kind of like that odd, almost uncanny valley effect we get with Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It is like perfect leaping out. Also massive. Also point to that. Also is Natasha Liu Bordizzo. Does a very similar job of lifting this character out. She has also there's a whole storytelling trope that's gone into her story about what she but also is later explained in a very interesting way, I felt, regarding the Purge and why that cut her training short. But holy crap, Ezra Bridger is live action and it is perfect. I cannot believe how perfect it is.
Yeah, he was. He didn't in the very brief little bit of we get of him in his first episode 6, didn't blow me away or anything like that. But in episode 7, when they're having the fight, and he's like, "No, you keep the lightsaber. The Force is my ally. I'll be fine." I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is a fun Ezra." And then that continued on. I think once we got into him doing action, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's absolutely Ezra action." And the he slipped into the lightheartedness that I remember from Rebels, that Ahsoka didn't.
And I feel like maybe that's just Ezra does, because later Ahsoka and Sabine are much more lighthearted. And I feel like that's I think that might be more of a scripting and storytelling thing where they're like, hey, there are certain characters that bring hope and a lightheartedness to other people around them. And one of them is Ezra.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I will say, they should just recast Luke Skywalker, because I really want a Luke Skywalker Ezra Bridger romp against Thrawn. I need that. I need it. I need to have these two Boken. By the way, shout out to the term Boken Jedi being introduced here. But for people who don't know, Boken is a wooden training sword that samurais use, or that people who practice kendo use. And so for him to call them Boken Jedi is so goddamn good and so fucking elitist of Baylan Skoll. They're calling them wild Jedi, basically. But calling them...
it's elitist, but he's also referring to Shin there.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, because she points out, am I a Boken Jedi?
Yes,
and he says, no, you're more than I trained you to be more than a Jedi.
Yeah, you're right.
Because he's right, because you have a bunch of Padawans who have taken on Padawans. Who didn't go through their quote-unquote their trials, and how much did they actually learn of the Force before they start passing it on. And we kind of get the idea of the degradation of the Jedi teachings over time, as they're kind of like watered down through a lack of legacy and carrying them through. And then it makes sense why Luke has such a reverence for, quote unquote, the true Jedi that he has in episode 8. So I love the idea of Boken Jedi. I love the idea of what they do with this. And yeah, it's true, because Ahsoka's a unfinished, didn't finish her training to become a Jedi Knight. She takes on Sabine as an apprentice. Sabine doesn't even finish her training under Ahsoka. Ezra takes it on from Kanan, and Kanan being, of course, originally Caden of the Caleb of the Jedi Order. And I also love that little point out of Hugh Yang being trying to critique Ezra's Jedi lightsaber building, even though Ezra's built 2 lightsabers already. Love the guard choice though, to give him his new lightsaber, give him Caden's guard. Yeah, it's a lovely touch.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, to that, Kanan in the Bad Batch, you see a young the first episode of the Bad Batch, you see a young Caleb Doom fleeing the Bad Batch as their as their potentially being affected by Order 66. So yeah, he was very much like a young Padawan who didn't finish his training and then takes on Ezra down the line.
We have these broken Jedi lineage. Like Luke even has he was trained by 2 Jedi masters, but didn't finish his training with either of them.
Yeah, he got trained for about a day by one of them, and then who knows how long before he left the other one. Because the timing of Empire is always
even the timing of the hyperdrive trip from Tatooine to Alderaan is also like quasi up in the air, because it does seem like they've been on the ship for a while. But like it's argued between a day to like maybe like 3 or like maybe a week. But even then, it's like, yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. Yeah, he learned how to block blaster bolts with a blinder on. Yeah. Like, that's what he learned from Obi-Wan.
Which, shout out to, like, that being one of the things Ahsoka was having Sabine pick up. I'm always a fan of those kinds of little nods.
Yep. I just expected in the next training montage for Ahsoka to be strapped to Sabine's back.
Yeah, and then Sabine doing front flips. Yeah,
front flips. We saw Grogu. Grogu nails his front flips.
Sure. Yeah.
He finished. He didn't finish it. That's another Boken Jedi right there. Grogu. Grogu the Mandalorian. Of the Mudhorn tribe or the Mudhorn clan.
Is that what they are? Mudhorns? I forget.
Yeah, the like giant tusk horned creatures. Yeah.
But then once we get to, it's interesting because we get like, obviously we get most of our cast going off to meet Thrawn. We still have like Hera stay behind. She has to basically take the heat. But we get a nice little like tie-in with C-3PO popping up. That was a fun little
shout out to C-3PO.
Yeah.
Also shout out to them referencing actual like parliamentary like frustrations and procedures and being like, wow, it's really crazy that you've decided to bring Captain Hera up here for charges without discussing it with Leia or with Senator Organa, who is the head
defense minister or whatever,
like the head of the defense, like defense council, basically, like like head, like prime, like basically a prime minister, not a prime minister, but a minister of the defense council.
Yeah.
Who is like basically like second only to the supreme, or not? She's just High Chancellor again.
Yeah.
They've gone away with Supreme Chancellor.
Yeah, Chancellor Mothma.
Yep. And so like it's great because it's like, hey, by the way, this is an illegal proceeding because you haven't brought Senator Organa on this. And so, by the way, if you had, she would have told you this is a sanctioned mission. And it's like perfect delivery.
Rebel through and
through. Just like so good. So good. Like, and Hera just like ready to take her, ready to be court-martialed, like ready to take the heat.
I mean, yeah, like I'll say like the one of the nice things that the earlier episodes give us, even as much as I would like to have gotten to Thrawn sooner, is we do get to see her wrestling with like the incongruous nature of like, well, we're not rebels anymore. We have to like do things by the book now, but by the book is a very bureaucratic and like inefficient option compared to especially what she was used to for the last few years.
It's exactly what we saw in Mandalorian season 3
yeah.
with like the Republic is back, but the Republic's back with all of its old problems. And we're seeing them on display here. So damn good.
Yeah. But yes, then we eventually make our way to Thrawn. And Lars Mikkelsen continues to be a great Thrawn.
Absolutely fucking nailing this character.
Yeah, we get to see like the fun calculations of Thrawn. Willing to throw lives away at a problem to gauge what that problem is.
But not too many.
Yes, acceptable losses. He always says, oh, what? Those like when he finds out, oh, they crashed the Jedi transport. To like, that's an acceptable variable for victory. Like that entire moment where you see his calculations, he goes, "I lost 2 TIE fighters, lost 2 TIE fighter pilots, prevented them." Like once again, he mentioned at the end of the last episode, he's winning because the one thing Ahsoka's side can't lose is time, and he's constantly costing them time. Yeah,
And so in a way, he's not trying to annihilate Ahsoka.
Yeah.
He has, I know what my variables for victory are. They're not to kill any of you. It's to get out of here. And he is also ready to get out of this other galaxy. He's done here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great because you see a little bit of like that survivor, like also all of his stormtroopers have like Frankensteined out armor out of like, they've been here for such a long time. They've had to like make their own repairs, use their own stuff, like produce their own materials. And it's like, it's great. There's so many great touches.
Or like, I like the, and I'm only really like putting this together now that we're talking about it, but like the implication that I'm kind of envisioning now is a lot of the colors that are on those stormtrooper gear are red, akin to like the bandits and the the people out in the wild. So yeah, they probably scavenged the scavengers basically, if not, in collaboration or concert with the Night Mothers or the
for sure.
Yeah.
But also you see a little bit of the kind of like the flair that the First Order has to some of their stuff. You're seeing like little shades of it here as well, which is cool. Not like a one-to-one comparison, but you're starting to see like the greater variation from original trilogy Stormtrooper gear.
Sure.
We're starting to see that evolution that we saw, the kind of like, not evolution, what's the word for like reverse evolution?
De-evolution?
I guess the de-evolution that we saw with the Clone Trooper armor, as it slowly got to evolve into the Stormtrooper armor that we know today.
Yeah.
And we're kind of getting another glimpse at how does the armor that is the classic Stormtrooper evolve in a way that is also, but also not like too much, because there is not that much of an evolution from original trilogy to new trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing is to the point you brought up earlier, I don't see the dots yet, how we get from Thrawn to the First Order.
We're still so far out.
Yeah.
We're still so far out.
And to where the First Order is, amassing enough of a force that by was it Force Awakens, they've amassed an entire planet-sized army to go out there and destroy 5 planets with their bigger Death Star kind of thing. How does that creep up and take the New Republic by surprise in the way that it does? I'm curious to see if we get answers to that, or if that's going to be left to like more comics or expanded stuff.
So we know a little bit from the Aftermath novel, but I will also point out we now have newly established canon that puts parts of Aftermath in in no longer canon territory, as the sequence of
any movie or show, basically, if it contradicts the written stuff, it's the new canon.
Exactly, which I think, once again, I've said it before, I will say it again, a better way of going about it.
Certainly a more mass appeal way of going about it, I think.
Absolutely. But also, let's be real, Aftermath was written really, really soon after Force Awakens as a way of to try to bridge a gap that was basically impossible to bridge, as we're you can't bridge the gap in one book. There's too much going on in the galaxy over the course of 30 years, 30 to 40 years of time. I forgot the exact time frame of it, but from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens is a buttload of time.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite things about the new expanded universe is we get to explore that time, and we got to see that first with Mandalorian season 1, starting that it's the first ever thing that we get from that in between time, and it really sets up kind of the idea of the frontier aspect of the Outer Rim, and reestablishing being the Outer Rim is not a civilized place, and what we're kind of getting out of that over the course of all these shows is a deeper look into that. But while also we're getting a look at more of the rebellion stuff with Andor. They're playing the whole field of the timeline. We're about to get a High Republic show apparently, which is awesome. They're playing the whole spectrum in the field here, which is great, because part of the problem with these out of canon, these non-sequential canon, the non-synchronization of canon, there's a lesser chance of that happening if creative decisions are all being made together as part of this overarching plan rather than being siloed off like they were before. The greatest weakness of the sequel trilogy is how siloed each of those movies were from each other. And they don't really feel as connected as they need to. That's a complaint that we've had for a long time. You and I both share that criticism of it. One of the reasons why, like, we will, like, yeah. Anyway, we could go down that.
The one thing I've always kind of stood against is the idea that, especially in hindsight, everybody's been like, they should have had a plan the whole time. I'm like, I don't think they needed to have had a plan for all three movies going into it. I think capable hands could have taken and built one after the other. We didn't get that, though. We got a whole bunch of, like, infighting and chaos kind of, and then just movies trying to contradict whatever came before it. So that's my biggest, like,
you have a studio
on that.
Well, you have a studio not standing by the product they made with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And making concessions based off of that, which was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes. Any other thoughts on the series before we want to wrap things up?
I have like 1,000 more thoughts, but all of them I can succinctly say is this: Ahsoka is a show worth watching. I had a phenomenal time. I was kind of heartbroken that it ended where it ended because I'm like, I really just want to know. I want more.
I mean, yeah, I guess we can go from there with where things have ended for our various characters. What do you think comes next for the Ahsoka cruise?
I have no idea. That's kind of why I'm so excited. Is I have no idea. Thrawn is now back in the galaxy. What does that mean? What does it mean for the remnant that has kind of, they've all been kind of in a kind of like neutral pact with each other. The Imperial remnants and warlords have all basically been like, we're all going to pretend that we're not all on the same side until Thrawn gets here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what kind of attitude, like what kind of infighting, what kind of new political dynamics are going to emerge with a Thrawn-led remnant? And then on top of that, you have everything going on with Ezra now back in the galaxy. Ezra, who left the galaxy when it was under the Imperial thumb, and now he's come back to a quote-unquote freed galaxy. But I'm really curious what his perspective is going to be as somebody who's been in virtual exile for such a long time. Mm-hmm. Like, that's one of the reasons why I want a Luke and Ezra, like, meet up, because it was great seeing a Luke and Ahsoka meet up. Just recast Luke. Let's just do it, guys. Let's stop the jabroni ass behavior of the AI CGI bullshit. Let's just put a new actor in there. We can do it. Sebastian Stan is perfect. The role. He's perfect. Give him some blonde in his hair, and he's good to go.
Yeah. Ezra in particular, I'm curious about as well. Like, for me, I think I'm certainly less interested in a Ezra Luke team up. Luke Ahsoka team up is interesting because of their united connection to Anakin. But Ezra doesn't really, like, there's nothing about Ezra that links him to, apart from like, oh, we have a similar background of, like, you know,
I'm just saying,
kind of farm boys that, you know, joined up with rebels and changed parts of the galaxy.
For me, it's less of a like, they need an intrinsic historical or like heretical, or not heretical, but like they need a purpose to be together, and they have to be pre-related in some way. I don't think that's necessary. I would just think I really like the idea of a Luke that we got to see from kind of like the material of the Book of Boba Fett. And I want to see these Boken Jedi hang out, basically. I want to see what, like, what does Ezra think of the temple?
And so in your mind, like, Ezra joins Luke and they kind of start training the next, you know.
That could be one direction. Another direction could be Ezra's like, I don't really see myself as part of this order you're rebuilding because that was never my bag.
Yeah.
I don't have any fond memories. I was not trained by I was trained in war. I was not, we had very different experiences, you and I. Mm-hmm. And I'm really interested in Luke, who really didn't have a long-term master the way Ezra had with Caden. And also, I'm interested, does Ezra take Caden's son as his Padawan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we saw Jason getting little hints and flavors of the Force.
Pretty strong flavors of the Force,
yeah.
It's really interesting. Like, there's a lot of different aspects of what could be happening with the backdrop of Thrawn gathering forces. We now have, like, more and more people pushing that Thrawn is back, Thrawn has returned. What does that mean for the galaxy? Like, Luke didn't fight when Thrawn was around.
I mean, yeah, well, like, especially Ezra being there with Hera, he is, and in a stolen from Thrawn ship and stormtrooper outfit, he is the proof that Hera needs to say, yes, Thrawn is back. And hopefully they don't go full on again, Harry Potter reference, Ministry of Magic.
They will.
Denying, no, he's not around. What are you talking about? I think they won't deny him, but I think they'll underestimate him.
I think so.
I think they'll underestimate like what he can do. 'Cause the thing they will underestimate is that all of those Imperial warlords aren't Imperial warlords and like disjointed, and they won't expect him to be able to bring them all under his thumb, which I think he absolutely has the full capability of doing. And then so amassing a much larger force than they're expecting.
What's funny, the only person who probably would have been a strong opposition to him was what's his name? I want to call him Gus.
Moff Gideon?
Yeah, Moff Gideon. The only person who might have been a strong like antagonist to that kind of unification of the Remnant might have been Moff Gideon.
I mean,
but Moff Gideon's gone now.
I understand where you're coming from on that, because we've saw enough of what Moff Gideon's plan was and stuff. But there were enough people around that like circle in Mandalorian season 3 that like had their own agendas and stuff like that. And
absolutely,
you could probably have any of them if you give them enough time and enough story that Moff Gideon had. Oh, they're a compelling heir to the Empire too, or something like that.
And I think that we will probably get more of that. I think Thrawn's. I think next season will be Thrawn trying, or like the next part of the story would be Thrawn trying to unite the Remnant while trying to keep himself and his location and everything about him hidden.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing I think is like how quickly are Thrawn and the Night Sisters going to just turn on one another now that they've gotten what they need or whatever from one another. Now that like Thrawn has gotten back and the Night Sisters have gotten to Dathomir, does that alliance stay intact, or do they become like a third faction that is going to play some role in this larger fight between the Empire and the rebels or the Republic? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen back in that other galaxy farther away?
I have no idea, but it's definitely tied deeper into like the mysteries of the Force. The statue of the father with the broken statue of the brother and sister. Where like what is Baylan seeking? We know that he's literally in the hand of the god of the Force, the singular embodiment of the Force at this point. With the sister and brother both dead. Like where we go from here is anybody's ball game. Where Ahsoka and Sabine go, like what Shin and the Scavengers do, what Baylan Skoll, like that's all up in the air, and I can't wait. I'm super excited for that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it doesn't make sense for them to not eventually make their way back, so I figure another Purgle ride is probably somewhere in the cards. But yeah, I'll be curious to see. I imagine like it'll be kind of a similar thing of like, all right, the first half of the next season of Ahsoka is going to be Thrawn gathering forces in that galaxy, while Ahsoka deals with whatever Shin and Baylan have going on in this one, and then at some point they'll my guess, if I had to guess, would be Baylan stays behind to become ingratiated with whatever is there, and they turn Shin, and Shin basically tries to come to the light, and they bring her into the fold and get back to face off against Thrawn.
I don't know.
It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. It's definitely interesting. I love the fact that we've now gone outside of the Star Wars galaxy, establishing that yes, there is more out there. Is this a hint that we'll get the Yuzong Vong? Maybe, maybe not. Have no idea what that is, so that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
It's it's one of the most divisive things that ever existed in Star Wars expanded universe canon, or Legends now. The Yuzong Vong.
Well, I love in I guess it was divisive. I didn't think it was, but I loved I loved Ahsoka having Hu Yang tell the stories of the childhood and his stories starting with a long time ago in a galaxy far
Loved it.
away. That was a wonderful just meta nod to everything.
Listen, folks, if you got a problem with it, please understand. These are literally supposed to be legends and stories, journals from the Wills. This is literally supposed to be a telling of a legend of a galaxy far, far away. So we're not watching stuff in live action or in lifetime. This is the legends that have been passed down.
Yeah.
That's always been the intent of Star Wars.
Indeed. All right. Well, we will go ahead and wrap up there then. Overall, a very good season. I don't know how eager or quick I need to go back and rewatch it or anything, but there will probably I will absolutely go back and watch clips of Ray Stevenson and stuff like that over the course of the series because I thought he was just a very compelling component of the show. All right. Well, let's dive into the report card where we grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give this, Cameron? Oh, I get one last thing to talk about. In the final episode, we got zombies. What'd you think of the action in the final episode over the course of it?
I liked it. I like the zombie stormtroopers. They're cool.
Is
it corny as hell?
I thought the pacing of some of it was very weird.
Absolutely.
It is very weird seeing our three heroes slowly back up steps as slow zombie stormtroopers kind of chase after them. Cause there weren't enough that they were overwhelmed. It was weirdly very much like the chase in Last Jedi. It's they're not powerful or fast enough to overwhelm you, so you're just going to slowly back away from them, occasionally slashing at them, and then they're going to fall, and then they're going to come back up. So that was a weird little kind of vibe. But
I don't think it was executed perfectly, but I think that it was. I like the idea of Night Sister zombies. I think that's cool.
I was gonna say the thing that worked for me execution wise was the two stronger troopers fighting against Sabine and Ezra while Morgan fought against Ahsoka. I really enjoyed that. In particular, I'm always a fan of the brutality of getting a lightsaber and just igniting it and just going straight through somebody's head.
That was awesome. Also, leaping through and lopping off the head, and the head after it's been cauterized, just rolling. Perfect. Loved that.
Yeah. Shout out to Sabine's very last minute critical level up of now she can pull things with the Force.
Yep.
And 5 minutes later, she is throwing Ezra onto a fleeing Star Destroyer.
Yep, it is. Listen, she finally realized. Oh shoot, that's right. I respect.
Yeah.
I finally leveled up. I can put a point in Force Pull. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Force Pull and Push. I put my points in there. I can now activate those abilities.
Yeah. And I did appreciate with everything else that the season kind of gave us in terms of Ahsoka and Sabine kind of at odds or not on the same page, the moments when they are on the same page and we get it in the dogfight stuff in one of the ships where they kind of Ahsoka kind of sits back and says, "Tell me what you need, Sabine," and then they get on the same page. There is a great bit, and then here at the end where Sabine stays behind to help Ahsoka gives them ultimately a victory, even if they don't catch up with Thrawn. But hey, they got Ezra out there, so yeah. Okay. So A+ to F. What do you want to give season 1 of Ahsoka here, Cam?
A+. Absolutely fantastic. There's definitely room for improvement for a season 2, but for a season 1, they absolutely nail what they needed to nail.
I think I'm probably going to go A- on this.
That's fair.
I think it's very, very good. I think largely my critiques are pacing and the split of the season not feeling even.
For sure.
Like on that note, we didn't even talk really about the whole like World Between Worlds episode where Ahsoka and Anakin kind of like face off and confront each other and meet each other and kind of stuff. That was like certainly a highlight. And very much Dave Filoni getting to Dave Filoni as much as he could. And yeah, as you touched on earlier, like Hayden Christensen being that version of Anakin and having writing that didn't hamper him in the way that Lucas's
had good direction.
Yeah, I think lots of and good God, we didn't talk favorite moments, but like the shot of Anakin walking off into the dust storm that turns into Vader, that turns back into Anakin. Fucking beautiful,
absolutely
beautiful,
gorgeous
imagery. So
yeah, the way they play with it being like, you know that this is a Force vision. Yeah, I'm showing up as your master that you know and love, but that's not all who I am.
And that's not all who I am.
And
like,
the fact that like there is a pennant to Anakin as a Force ghost. There is a like an aura of penance that he is paying. Adds to, I think, the idea of like Anakin was redeemed, but it's like, well, maybe being redeemed isn't like, oh, he's automatically a good guy again and fine being a spirit. Maybe it is more of like he was turned around and put back on the right path for the right reasons. And because of that, he is like, there is a process and a cycle that has to go on. Like he's maintained his identity in the Force, which is one thing.
Yeah, that was another thing. I did like him looking over Ahsoka in this galaxy far, far away.
Yep.
At the end, that was a nice little
wonderful little nod.
Little
nod to the same way we saw like with Qui-Gon showing up at the end of Obi-Wan.
Yep.
That perfect like little like oh, you finally showed. I was like, I've always been here. Like
you just weren't ready to see me.
Yeah, just the perfect level of like you're
and
always
even there. Like Ahsoka's still not yet ready to see. Like Sabine almost saw him, or got a glimpse.
She got a glimpse of him, which is fantastic. It's so good. There's so many great moments in this show that I think they just absolutely nail. But that's why it's my A+. But I totally get pacing wise.
Yeah.
You're like the shortcomings and the shortfalls. I think you are completely like. I just don't think this falls out of A territory is probably the thing I would say the most.
That's fair. Great. Well, extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Of course, you have The Mandalorian, you have The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars The Clone Wars, the series, Star Wars The Clone Wars, the film, Tales of the Jedi, and Master and Apprentice, a special look at Ahsoka, which is only like a 7-minute special look. So I feel like they're going to do much like they've done with Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian stuff. They will definitely have like a full-length breakdown of here's the making of Ahsoka. But right now what's on Disney Plus is this little 7-minute thing that's probably like, here's Ahsoka so far prior to the Ahsoka series.
We definitely need another roundtable of directors talking about the stories of each of these episodes because there's so much to pull from. I really want to know what it was like working with working with the characters who came on, or the actors
made the leap.
Yeah, made the leap. I want to know more about what it was like making that leap. What was your preparation? What did you have to go into it with it? Like,
basically like. I don't even know that like that wouldn't be necessarily a Ahsoka specific thing for me, but like get Katie Sackhoff and Lars Mikkelsen together and just like interview each other about like making the jump from your animated character to the live action version.
Absolutely.
I will say I was surprised in large part because they've done little nuggets like this in the past and little Easter eggy things. I was surprised that there wasn't a place for Matt Lanter and Ashley Eckstein in this as like cameos or somewhere else. Like I was surprised that we didn't get and Matt Lanter we got in an early Mandalorian cameo, so maybe they didn't feel they needed to do that. But like I was surprised there wasn't anywhere in here that had like a little Ashley Eckstein kind of cameo nod to her, given her of course lineage as Ahsoka in the animated stuff. But There's always more time to come, I'm sure. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk all about Ahsoka Season 1 here. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to, if you haven't watched it yet, I have put out the last of like the Let's Play footage stuff that I shot over at PAX West. That's live now. I've talked about before, but you get to now see my you can now see the 2 games that I called my games of the show, Fight Crab 2 and Demon School. Also, thanks so much for the retweets that I got from both developers on when I mentioned both games.
Nice. Great. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to that, I will shout out other Let's Plays on our YouTube as I continue my journey through Baldur's Gate. We did some Halsin side quest stuff this time around, helping to restore the yes. Shadowlands. So yeah, go check that out. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, the rest of October here will be Halloween-themed stuff. Given the cycles we've done the last few years, I think next week will probably be our Halloween Town culmination as we do return to Halloween Town. But then we have we'll get a revisit with Rosario Dawson with Haunted Mansion, and then I got to figure out something for the last week. I'm still probably leaning towards Goosebumps, which will be coming to Disney Plus here in a week or two. So yeah, stay tuned for all that the rest of the month here on That D Plus Show. If you liked what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other. Class dismissed. May the Force be with you.
And also with you.